A rape in a kids' hospital.
That's as confronting an opener as anything we've had on this show. A 13-year-old is admitted to Perth Children's Hospital because she's suicidal after being sexually assaulted. And whilst inside what should be one of the safest places in the country, she's raped again by a fellow patient who's also 13.
Oh, God.
CCTV from the night 2 years ago shows him crawling across the floor into the girl's room. She later wrote an essay about what happened next. How he had told her earlier that day he was going to drug staff so he could, quote, do stuff to her. And how medicos were nowhere to be seen before, during and after the ordeal. And the only reason we know anything about it is because the ABC is investigating the incidents of sex assault in mental health wards, and the victim spoke to a journo.
What happens now?
The same thing that always happens when there's a scandal in the public service. Launch an inquiry so it looks like you're doing something. We're told there have been inquiries by the Child and Adolescent Health Service, the Office of the Chief Psychiatrist and the Mental Health Advocacy Service. Would have liked to see this logo in the mix, but hey, what would I know? Regardless of what the cops did or are doing, the political point scoring and bureaucratic arse covering is in full swing. It's the kind of incident that highlights the importance of having a truly independent agency to cut through the self-interest.
A job for your mate, the Ombudsman.
My mate. WA's Ombudsman has been in the job for 16 years. In that period, I've been the West Australian newspaper's political editor, business editor and chief reporter.
Oof, it's been a hard few years.
Thank you. 3 pretty senior editorial roles in this state, and it wasn't until I read the latest annual report that I had any idea what the Ombudsman's name was. It's Chris Fields, for the record. Never heard of him, much less spoken to him, much less met him.
I don't quite know
What the he does. Lots, apparently. The Ombudsman receives, investigates and resolves complaints about state government agencies, local governments and universities, undertakes major investigations with all the powers of a standing royal commission, reviews child deaths and family and domestic violence fatalities, and undertakes a range of other functions including oversighting telecommunications intercept laws and consorting laws.
that is a lot.
I know this because I read it on the Ombudsman's website. The agency has more than 80 staff and is one of a handful of independent watchdogs which ensure good governance in Western Australia, our own little Five Eyes Security Council. Public Sector Commission is inward-facing and the Information Commissioner is all about FOI kung fu, so it's understandable that they have low profiles. But the Office of the Ombudsman has a public-facing remit. Chris Field has been mentioned in the daily newspaper barely 30 times in 16 years. That compares with 77 times for Carolyn Spencer in the 5 years she's been Auditor General, and 200 times in the 6 years John McKechnie has been Commissioner of the CCC.
Just because you're not in the media doesn't mean you're not busy.
Oh, Chris is very busy, packing his suitcase. This guy Samsonite is getting a hammering because as well as his $450,000 a year gig in WA, he holds a senior position in one of the world's most important diplomatic missions.
The UN?
Not the UN, not even NATO, not the G7 or the real Five Eyes Security Council. Chris is the president of the International Ombudsman Institute, a role which requires this international man of mystery to travel abroad with monotonous regularity. In the last 12 months, taxpayers have shelled out more than $260,000 for Chris and his staff, usually Assistant Ombudsman Rebecca Poole, to jet set around the world.
That's a big jump. Where do they go?
Everywhere. In 7 overseas trips last financial year, Chris visited China, Taiwan, Ukraine, Britain, the US, Slovenia, Thailand, Austria, Russia, France, Morocco, Poland and Hungary. Probably more, but I got bored counting. Didn't make a secret of it, all over the website and the annual report.
It's a lot of frequent flyer points.
The trip to Austria sounds like a real doozy. Don't take my word for it, take Chris's, straight from the annual report. The visit included a privately guided tour of the truly stunning Schloss Eggenberg, a night at the opera, and a private guided tour by the director of the Modern Art Museum, the Kunstgras. This is a man whose primary job is reviewing child deaths and domestic violence murders. You'd reckon he'd have his hands full just there. He's the independent overseer of the way the police enforce the new bikie consorting and association laws. This guy shouldn't have time to go to Rottnest, let alone the Schloss Eggenberg. What the is the Schloss Eggenberg anyway? And why am I paying to send this rooster there?
So cultured.
That's me.
It's the culture, Daryl. The place is full of culture.
Chockers!
I'm Ben Harvey. For more Up Late, click the subscribe button below.